You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 149. We're talking about creative ways to find the money that you need for your business. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Public service announcement from Red Podcast. We found this out the hard way. You probably already knew it, but I didn't know it. If you ever see a lost dog in your neighborhood, let it come to you.
What do you mean?
Don't chase it.
Don't chase it.
Don't chase a lost dog in your neighborhood or anywhere.
Why not?
Because it freaks out. It thinks it's playing a game, and it'll run away from you, perhaps into traffic.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. We saw that happen a few months ago, and it didn't have a good result.
No, the dog got hit by a car.
Which is why when we were out over the weekend and there was a little bitty poodle in the middle of the road running right in front of us, we stopped and tried to get it to come to us.
You leaped out of the car. You're like, stop. And you leaped out of the car and ran after it. That was not the best approach.
That's not how I remember it.
You got it out of the road, so that was good. How do you remember it?
I remember that I got out and it was chasing some people, and I said, "Is this your dog?" And they were like, "No." Then I grabbed the dog leash that we had because we had our dog with us and was hoping that the dog would come to me, but it didn't. Then it came to you.
It did. Well, then I got out of the car and walked across the street to where you were, and there were, 3 people, 4 including me, trying to get a hold of this dog, and none of them were the owner. And what I did was I squatted down and held out my arms, and the dog ran right towards me.
So Laurel Staples, humanitarian and dog lover, saved a dog's life this weekend. We called the name on the tag. The guy didn't seem too concerned his dog was missing. No,
we returned the dog to the owner probably 30 minutes later when he called us back. We had called the number on the tag, and he called us back. Didn't seem too concerned that his dog was running in the middle of the road and was about to be hit by a car, but we returned it anyway.
I think he was high.
He might have been. And I told him that the dog had run towards me, and he said that I looked just like his daughter.
Your doppelganger.
I know. I think the dog thought I was the safest bet out of everyone.
This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. This podcast is for authors, speakers, and coaches. We'll help you to expand your influence, reach more people with your message, and make money doing the work that you love. We'll show you how to build a successful personality-based business and live life on your terms.
And rescue all the dogs in your neighborhood.
And give you tips, about dogs.
About dogs.
A problem a lot of entrepreneurs face, even speakers, authors, and coaches, is lack of money or lack of cash flow. Where does it come from?
I think that's one of the biggest problems that people face. If money was not an issue, I think more people would just go and do what they love to do and find a way to add value into the world without thinking twice about it.
If money wasn't an issue, we wouldn't be working at all.
I would. You would too. Money doesn't have to do with how much people like to work. I think it's just that money becomes a big issue when there's obviously not enough of it and you want to pursue your dreams, but the lack of money or the 9-to-5 job that's given you that money is a big concern, and that it holds people back from doing what they really want to do.
When I was in junior high, I had a really great lesson from my father. I'd seen an ad in the back of a Boys Life magazine, which is like the Boy Scout magazine. It was an opportunity to invest in this company called Tubi, and they would send you a kit. Tubi was a flying can, sort of like a Frisbee, which is basically like a Coke can, sawed in half, and you can throw these things like a spiral, like a football, and it floats.
Or were you born in the 30s? Old school. It's like kick the can. All right, I'm with you.
This is the flying can, though.
Okay, the flying can.
Flying can. And for $20, you got maybe 8 of them. You're supposed to sell them at your school for $3. You got the T-shirt. You got the Tubi sticker. I don't know what else was in it. But I remember my father, he said, yeah, I'll give you that money as a loan. After you make your first few sales, give the money back, but you've got enough money to keep this thing going.
How much was it?
Like $20. The $20 investment from my father.
How old were you?
I would have been 13 years old.
Why didn't you have any money?
I wasn't rich like you at the all-girls school.
Well, I did my chores, and I got an allowance, and then I was able to spend my money.
So $20 to get me in my first business. The business failed. Everybody just started sawing their own Coke cans in half, which they could get for free. Now, they'd cut you. They weren't as good as my product, but it was a valuable lesson there. It was also a valuable lesson that loans, they're not free. And I know that sounds completely ridiculous, but that's how a lot of people approach their businesses. Oh, I'll just go on Shark Tank and get some money. I'll just go to venture capitalists and give me some money. I'll just get funding. And nobody thinks about ever paying that money back or what they're having to give to get that money.
Or even if you're writing a book and you think, oh, I'll just get a publisher.
Just get an advance.
I'll just get an advance. You don't think that you will be paying that advance back.
Exactly. That's an advance against sales. We are in a funding culture. And I think this is a huge issue because we start to base our success on funding rather than having a real business. How many people do you know in the funding culture, all they do is go out and try to get more funding? They're not even working on their businesses anymore.
I hear that all the time when you're talking one-on-one with these people. It's, what are you up to? How's your business going? Well, we're trying to find another investor. We're doing another round of investing. And it's like, have you even validated your product? We don't know.
No.
And and you and I were watching Shark Tank the other day. I don't know if we had brought this up on the podcast, but there was that woman who had a lingerie line who was talking to the sharks and saying that really her reason for the valuation of her company was that other people had lent her money at a certain valuation, and she was from Silicon Valley. So because other people had given her money, that the sharks should give her money. And it was very illogical, but she seemed to believe it.
But that's how it works, though. Social proof. If somebody's giving you money at a certain valuation, other people come in.
And then I read later in More magazine where they had an article on her, and I believe it was before Shark Tank came out, and it said that loan came from friends and family members. Which is
stupid money.
Yeah. So it was like...
It's like my dad gave me $20 to invest in cans.
Yeah. It just didn't make any sense at all. But that is the culture that we're getting into, and people feeling like this money is free, essentially.
Well, on the topic of where does the money come from, I think it's worth saying that anytime you get money from friends or family, that is risking your relationship.
Absolutely.
In a big, big way.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever gotten money from somebody and not paid it back?
I don't think so. There are plenty of bills that I've skipped out on, but not a personal loan.
Yeah. It'll mess things up when you do that, or it can.
Well, I've loaned money, and it's taken me a long time to get that money back. There's a lot of pressure on the relationship during that time. After having a couple of those experiences, no, not doing it. On a positive note, the people that this podcast is for, authors, speakers, coaches, you don't often need the kind of money that investors would come in with to have a successful business. And I've seen a lot of creative funding to get cash flow and to get, let's call it income for your business. Speaking of Shark Tank, you ran into a woman, Lori Cheek. You had an interview with her about how she funded her company. She eventually made it to Shark Tank, but before that, I thought what she was doing was very creative.
Yeah, she decided she needed money to put into her business, and I guess didn't have any friends or family to turn to or didn't want to take that route because that's a scary route. So she looked at, okay, what do I have? And after working a designer job, she had a lot of designer clothes, and she had a really nice apartment. So she put up her apartment for rent on Airbnb, which she was actually not supposed to do, according to the landlord. And she sold off, I think it was $20,000 to $40,000 worth of her clothing. And that's what helped her fund her business. And unfortunately, she did not get an investment from the sharks. So I don't know what she did after that.
Here's a funny story that's related. Music business story, coming from the music business. A lot of times what rappers will do when they get their advance, which as we already explained is just a loan. These guys, when they have that initial success, a lot of them will go out and they'll buy this amazing jewelry, big gold chains, diamonds, spend all their money on crazy jewelry.
It's called bling, David.
Exactly. Thinking that the money is never going to end because they've made it. Now, what ends up happening a lot of times is the album doesn't get released. The album tanks. The album doesn't sell as much as they wanted to, so they never get that advance back. And the way they support themselves is taking one diamond out at a time, selling this jewelry off piece by piece. More than one guy that I know has had that happen to him.
Well, that's because success is not a destination. You arrive and then you're there. So if you get a taste of it, you still have to be on track and not spend like crazy. What are some other ways that you've seen people fund their businesses that aren't going the standard VC, Shark Tank, investor funding route?
I know a lady who stayed with her parents for a little while. She had a retail store.
Oh, that was me.
Talk about that.
Totally me. Yeah, I decided that when I opened my retail store, which was my first full-time entrepreneurial venture, I decided I needed to save money. So I crashed with my parents for a while. And that worked out for me because my parents are awesome. So I didn't have a big issue with that. But I've heard of other people doing that and not having such a good experience. But for me, it was more important to spend that money that I'd pay on rent to get my business going and to really set myself up for success. And crashing with my parents was just something that I was willing to do to make that happen. And it worked for me. It wasn't going to work forever, but it worked in the beginning.
I think it's a mindset to take it back to the guys that are getting funding. A lot like rappers. I see a lot of people, as soon as they get that big check, they all of a sudden get a nice place to live. They think that it's never going to end. They think it's going to end positively. You get a really nice place, and they're just burning through company money that would probably better for most people to be put in savings. But with that said, it's quite a sacrifice to go live with somebody like a lot of roommates or certainly parents.
Or in-laws.
That would be the worst for me. Not
In-laws.
to say that
My
me
parents
living
are
with
awesome.
Well, your parents are great, but I'm not going to live with them.
Wow.
That'd be the worst for them.
Or in-laws.
That could be tough.
That could be tough depending on who your in-laws are. We both have good in-laws, so that's nice. But still, to not have autonomy and to not be able to live by yourself is tough. And it is a sacrifice that you would be making because it's not an ideal situation.
I've seen a lot of people do consulting on the side using the skill set that you want to ultimately be successful in for your new venture, taking some side jobs to make money with that. It's kind of like a day job. Certainly I've done that. When I was getting going, I was working a lot of day jobs on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was great because the day job actually motivated me to work harder on my business. I hated the day job so much, dealing with what I thought were idiot bosses, dealing with commutes, dealing with a 9-to-5, hated it. And it made me work that much harder. So that's another advantage of not taking money and having something on the side. If it's painful, that pain gives you something to run away from.
I think it does. I think it's that fuel under your butt that gets you moving. When you don't want to work a day job the rest of your life, you are going to do something about it, as opposed to if someone just gives you $1 million check, well, you're going to work, but are you going to work as hard? I don't know.
What about credit cards? A lot of people get into trouble with them. A lot of people have used them successfully. Have you ever run up a lot of credit card debt?
I have when I was doing my retail store, but it was debt that it was intentional debt. I was charging the cost of the clothing on there, and I'd get it into the store, and then I'd sell it, and then I'd pay back the debt. So it was just like a cash advance. But I've seen people get into major debt that they can't pay off.
Well, what happens if it doesn't work out like you think it's going to work out? We all have big plans. We say, oh, we're going to charge this thing up. We'll be making money in a couple months. That doesn't always happen. It sounds like it worked out for you well.
It worked out for me. I've never really had an issue with credit card debt. I use them pretty responsibly. But it was intentional. I had to be intentional with it. It may not work out, but I think if you keep working towards what you want and you have a plan and you start paying it down and you follow all those money rules, which have you paying off your credit card debt, I think it's good. I think there's a big difference between charging a credit card expense like a big screen TV or a new car, if you could put that on a credit card, those things that are depreciating assets. And when you invest in your business, that's actually has the potential to pay it back, where a big screen TV or clothing or shoes or a new computer, all of those things have no way to pay that credit card back. They're not tools that you can invest in to help you. So I think there's a big difference there between what you use credit cards to purchase.
Sure. If I had a cash flow issue, I would not hesitate to go invest in a new computer if I'm working on a book, invest in something like podcast equipment if I felt that podcasting was helping our business. Big screen TV, not so much. But if you're investing in something that you're going to use to make money and you actually have a plan and you're going to put that plan into action, I think that's fine. I'm very pro credit card. We all, no matter how much money we're making, eventually we'll get into a cash flow issue where we need more of it than is coming in. And if you've got a plan and if you can follow up with it and you trust yourself, I wouldn't hesitate to do that. With that said, the plan doesn't always go like you feel that it's going to go. And it might take you a little bit longer. You might have to pay some interest. I'm not telling anybody to charge things up like crazy. I think you do have an opportunity and you should be very deliberate if you are going to use a credit card.
I also think you have to understand your past usages of a credit card. If you're someone who just spends and spends and spends and is not good with them and isn't intentional with them, using them to build your business might not be the best idea. You might want to get a handle on that first. But someone like me, I didn't have a problem running up debt. I don't buy a lot of things. And so intentionally using it for business just wasn't going to end up being a huge issue for me, even if it took time to pay it off. So just look at your usage and your history with credit cards before diving in and doing that. And we are not financial advisors or planners, so go seek out advice if you want real advice on that.
Why I think that you and I have been able to use credit cards successfully is because, one, we've got real businesses that make money. We weren't pretending to have a business either via funding, spending somebody else's money, or by living off of credit cards. I think that's where people get into trouble with credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
You pretend to have a business and it's not really a business because if you've got this money in the bank, it's easy to feel that way. It's easy to feel like you're successful. Here's the good news for coaches, authors, consultants. They're very low-cost businesses for the most part. Coaching, consulting, speaking, it's dollars for hours, and that is the downside of these businesses, at least from a service standpoint. But even the products that you make, they're not going to cost you that much more than your time. Online, digital products, the economics of a book, if you're going to write a book yourself, you need something to write it on. A cheap computer, $500 is all you would need. You don't even really need that. You've got to get it edited, laid out. I would say $3,000, $4,000. You could do all of this, a great editor, and get you something that could make that money back quite easily. It's not going to be like a Pulitzer Prize winner probably. But
speak for yourself.
That's not that much money to get something out there that could potentially be your platform that's going to take you to the next level.
At the same time, I think that is a lot of money for some people, especially when you're starting out. And as we all know, the things that you do when you start out are not your best pieces of work, and you're still in the learning process. So at that point, how do you know how much to invest in something when you're still learning? When in the next couple months, you're going to realize, oh my God, that book wasn't as good as I thought it was, or I didn't know how to market that. So how do you weigh that out?
You only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Tweet that right now.
You have to start where you are because that's all you've got. That's the great thing when we're talking about books. If you're going to go for a digital book especially, you can always rewrite it. But even a print book, if it's like a print on demand, not that big a deal. You don't have to print 10,000 books or even 1,000 books at a time right now to get a book out. Just print them one at a time. You can always update that, even if it's as quickly as a couple of months.
True, it's cheaper than ever before, but I still think an investment of $3,000 to $4,000, although reasonable to put out a book, I think for a first timer, maybe not the best option, depending on what you want to do with it and your situation.
The big idea here is that you don't need as much money as you think that you need. I'm throwing out $3,000 to $4,000 because I feel like that's the minimum that it takes to really do it right. But with that said, if I were to release a book on Kindle, if I only had $1,000, we could do that.
Oh, sure.
Maybe not get a great editor, but you could at least have a proofreader. Don't skimp on the proofreading. You don't want to have problems with typos and little things that could be fixed with just a couple $100. A few $100 maybe, depending on how long the manuscript is. But if you're going just to Kindle, let's say you got your artwork, $150, $250, layout, professional layout on Kindle is going to run you a couple $100. Editing, $500, $600, under $1,000 for that. It's not that much money. You could go out and find a day job. You could sell some clothes that you've got in your closet.
I don't think I could sell many of my clothes, but beyond the point there.
Dollars for hours, doing coaching, consulting, doing even a seminar. Not that much money. You rent a room, $200, $300, bring people in, $50, $60, $100. You can make that money back quite quickly. And that's on the very low end. We know because we work with a lot of people that can get a whole lot more money than that.
The bottom line is you don't need as much money as you think you do. When you're watching Shark Tank, if you're like us and you watch it every week and you're seeing these people get hundreds of thousands of dollars in many cases, you think, oh my God, I need that money. I could really use that money. But you really don't. You don't need that money to get started. You don't need that money to put your toe in, dip your toe in, and get rolling on your business. And generally, the less money that you have in the beginning, the better, because you use your money wisely and you work on the things that are really going to produce results for you. And it helps you hone in on exactly what needs to be done and what's important to do in your business. And that really helps you than having a ton of money. So don't let a lack of money slow you down or stop you. There are plenty of ways to get it and to move forward in your business. And even if you just have to start small and build up, that's the best way to do it anyway.
I read the autobiography by Paula Deen, and she talked about starting her business. I think she had $200, maybe $300. And she said that that was a huge gift for her because had she had more money, she wouldn't have been as deliberate about finding out what worked for her to sell. She was in the food business. Because there was no plan B, she had to make sure what she had was going to work, and that was actually a huge benefit. I think thinking about limited money as an asset rather than a detriment can help you a lot. Let's wrap it up. If you're going to get money, we both agree, don't do it from your family. Don't do it from friends. It puts too much strain on the relationship. If you do loan money, my suggestion, don't worry about getting it back. So many times that never happens. We live in a funding culture where people are basing success on whether or not they get funding, but that doesn't mean that you have a real business. Real businesses make money. They are not in the business of going out and getting funding after funding after funding, whether it be a loan from your parents, whether it be venture capital, whether it be charging things up on credit cards. And on that note, neither Laurel and I have an issue with credit cards. You can use them as a tool, but that's it. They're a tool. They're not a way to sustain your business. You have to figure out how you're going to make money. You don't need as much money as you think to actually make money or provide value. Having an offering that includes consulting, some kind of dollars for hours, speaking, coaching type service, or a digital product is an easy way to jump in and make money quickly. If you do need money, or if you find yourself having a cash flow problem, you probably have more options than you realize, even if it's going into your closet and selling clothes on eBay. Do like Lori Cheek did, even if it's renting out your place on Airbnb and staying with a friend for a little while. Or if you're like a rapper, selling one diamond at a time out of your necklace.
I think you got to keep costs down and work with what you got. Start small and build up.
Thanks for listening to the Red Podcast. You can find more from us at redpodcast.com. If you get online and search for Real Entrepreneur Development, whether it be in iTunes, the Google App Store, or Amazon App Store, you can download the Red Podcast app. That's free and the easiest way for you to get all the episodes of Red Podcast. We publish 3 days a week. And while you're on iTunes, if you can leave us a review, that will help us to grow the Real Entrepreneur community, help more people. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.
That sounded awful. You know that dog?
Yeah, no.
All right.
That's not a good start.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry.